Rory McIlroy thought he was making a simple point about LIV Golf. But one comment about whether LIV's biggest stars have actually brought value to the league has now triggered a fresh response from Bryson DeChambeau. And Bryson's answer wasn't what many expected. Instead of launching a personal attack at Rory, Bryson made a passionate plea for LIV Golf itself, asking fans and the golf world to give the controversial league one more shot. So why did Rory make the comment in the first place? And could this be the beginning of another major McIlroy-DeChambeau showdown? Let's break it down. The latest chapter began when Rory McIlroy was asked about the possibility of LIV Golf players returning to the PGA Tour. Names such as Bryson DeChambeau and Jon Rahm are at the center of that conversation. McIlroy's response was blunt. Instead of accepting that these players would automatically add value to the PGA Tour, Rory turned the question around. He essentially asked, "Have they even brought value to LIV?" That comment immediately grabbed attention, because DeChambeau and Rahm aren't ordinary LIV players. They're two of the biggest names who joined the breakaway league. And Rory's argument goes much deeper than simply criticizing individual golfers. He has consistently argued that LIV Golf fractured professional golf without delivering the lasting value its supporters promised. But this time, Bryson had an answer. Bryson DeChambeau was asked about the situation as LIV Golf's future becomes increasingly uncertain. And rather than dismissing Rory's comments, Bryson defended the league. His message was essentially, give LIV another chance. DeChambeau said his wish was for people to give LIV one more shot and remain open-minded about what the league could become. That's an important response. Because Bryson isn't pretending everything is perfect. He knows LIV is facing serious questions. But he clearly believes the experiment hasn't had enough time to prove what it can ultimately become. And that's where this story gets much bigger. The timing of Bryson's comments could hardly be more significant. LIV Golf's Saudi backing is ending after the 2026 season, and the league has been searching for a new financial structure. The 2026 schedule has also been disrupted, with the planned team championship in Michigan canceled, meaning Indianapolis has effectively become the final LIV event of the season. LIV has said it has secured a lead investor for its next chapter, but questions remain about exactly what the league will look like in 2027. How many events will there be? How much money will be available? Which players will stay? And perhaps most importantly, will LIV still matter? Those questions make Rory's comments particularly powerful, because if LIV struggles to survive, his argument becomes much harder to dismiss. There's another fascinating part of this story. World number one Scottie Scheffler doesn't completely agree with Rory. Scheffler acknowledged that while the PGA Tour has greater depth, LIV still has several elite players who could bring significant value to the PGA Tour. He also said there are LIV players he would genuinely enjoy competing against again. That is a very different perspective from Rory's. And it raises an interesting question. Maybe the issue isn't whether LIV players have value. Maybe the real question is where that value should be displayed. Because players like DeChambeau and Rahm remain major attractions. Their presence in professional golf still generates headlines, attention, and debate. And Bryson clearly believes that matters. And Bryson isn't the only LIV player pushing back. Westwood has also criticized Rory's comments. Westwood described Rory's position as typical of Rory and argued that the presence of LIV players in other major golf events demonstrates that they still have value to the sport. So what started as one comment from Rory has now become a much broader debate. Rory is questioning LIV's contribution. Bryson is defending LIV's future. Scheffler is acknowledging the value of some LIV stars. And Westwood is openly criticizing Rory's argument. But there's something else that makes Bryson's response fascinating. If LIV survives, DeChambeau has a chance to prove his argument. He can point to his performances. He can point to his popularity. He can point to the attention he has generated for the sport. And he can argue that LIV's biggest stars still have enormous commercial and competitive value. But if LIV fails to establish itself beyond 2026, Rory's question becomes much more difficult for Bryson to answer. That's why this isn't simply another argument between two golf stars. It's effectively a debate over the future of professional golf. And let's not forget the history between these two. Rory McIlroy and Bryson DeChambeau already have one of the most recognizable rivalries in modern golf. Their 2024 U.S. Open battle became one of the most dramatic major championship finishes in recent memory. Now, more than 2 years later, they're once again on opposite sides of one of golf's biggest debates. Only this time, the argument isn't happening over a final round leaderboard. It's happening over the future of professional golf. Rory says LIV needs to prove its value. Bryson says it deserves another chance, and the clock may be running out. The next few months could determine whether Bryson's plea becomes the beginning of LIV's comeback or the final defense of a league that couldn't survive the pressure. Because if LIV gets that one more shot Bryson is asking for, he and the other stars will have to prove that the league can actually deliver. And if they can't, Rory McIlroy may eventually get the last word. So whose side are you on, Rory or Bryson? Let me know in the comments. And if you want more breaking golf stories and the biggest controversies from the PGA Tour and LIV Golf, subscribe to Golf Stories and turn on notifications.